Welcome to Death on Clare Island, Chapter 23B. I whispered a short prayer for both Matthew and Sharon. Bless you, I said softly, and know that I'm sorry that I couldn't change the outcomes. I couldn't help wondering how many times I'd have to taste defeat in my life. Hope and certainty of my mother's love had sustained me thus far, but clues to her whereabouts were as sparse as the thin threads that dangled from Matthew's case. All the facts surrounding my mother's disappearance pointed to abandonment. All that is, except for the one I held in my heart. I will never believe she deserted me willingly. I turned out of the living room and headed toward the front door and toward warmth, life, and moving on. Then, reaching for the handle, I noticed Matthew's mail resting on a cardboard box inside the front door. I hesitated for a moment, then gathered up the pile. It comprised mostly of art catalogs and newsletters. They looked out of place here, colorful and lively, unlike the cold, dark hallway that was barely lit by the fading day. I flicked automatically through everything. I stopped when I noticed that one of the pieces was addressed to Sharon. It was an antique furniture newsletter called The Family Attic. I turned it over and read the publisher's name, Scott Bell. It made sense to me that Sharon and Matthew would share some of the same interests. Since it was art and antiques in this instance, I wondered whether Peter knew Sharon. I made a mental note to ask him on Friday. I took one last look around and then stepped outside, shutting the door firmly behind me. Rush hour. I'd forgotten the surge of traffic that flows through Westport in the late afternoon as workers return to villages like Belcara and Turla. While I sat in my car waiting for the traffic signal to turn green, I noticed the unmistakable stocking cap and blonde hair that flowed beneath it. Lucia emerged from the red door of Young's Interesting Books shop. She wasn't getting away from me this time. As she moved along the crowded sidewalk, I edged my car out of the line of traffic and into a parking spot along the curb. Parking meter? Forget it. I chanced the ticket rather than waste time digging for change. Minutes later, I came abreast of her. Lucia! I gently nudged her elbow to get her attention. Arms laden with painting books, she moved away from the curb toward one of the shop doors when she heard her name. Then, upon seeing me, her eyes widened and she pursed her lips. "Oh, it's you," she said. "I'm sorry if I frightened you. Were you expecting your mother or father?" A red flush spread over her pale features, and her eyes widened even more. "Oh, no, not them." "Then who, Lucia?" "I saw you back there at the apartment, Matthew's apartment, and I know you saw me. Why didn't you tell me what's going on?" She seemed reluctant to answer, so I looked around for somewhere we could talk privately. We were already standing in front of Curry's cottage, a tiny tea shop and bakery. "Why don't we have a cup of coffee?" I said, nodding toward Curry's green window sashes. She nodded, shifting the books in her arms, and turned into Curry's narrow door. Then she walked toward an empty table and placed the books on a chair. I offered to get our drinks while she waited. She wanted a hot chocolate. After a few minutes of warming our hands on the hot mugs and taking our first careful sips, I asked again, "So why don't you tell me what's going on?" She removed the stocking cap and pushed her blonde hair behind her ears. "Nothing. Nothing is going on. Matthew promised to give me a book about the history of women in art. I don't know why, but I thought I might still get it. Perhaps his sister." Her voice faltered as the words ran out. "What, Lucia? You thought his sister might be at the apartment?" She shrugged. "I didn't know. I thought if I hung around I'd see someone, but then I saw you and I got scared." She punctuated the sentence with another shrug. I sat back in my chair and pushed my mug away to the side to clear the space between us. So, what is it that you're afraid of? What else do you know about Matthew and what happened on Clare Island? You know that Sharon Dawson is dead, don't you? Yes, I heard it on the radio. I can't. I don't know anything about it, though. She and Matthew fought a lot. That's all I know for certain. That and the fact that I just want to be an artist and get away from that island. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she looked away from me to her pile of books. Was she telling the truth, or was she putting on a dramatic act? Teenagers, it's hard to size them up. Their emotional range often changes within a few minutes. I decided to treat her more like an adult than a teenager. Lucia, you realize that if you know anything, you're in danger. There's no doubt now, with Sharon's death, that there's a killer at work here. Don't you think it would be wise to tell someone if you have any knowledge about her and Matthew? I paused, waiting for these ideas to sink in. I don't know any more than what I've already told you, she snapped back. Then she reached for the stocking cap and pulled it down over her hair again. My parents don't want me speaking with you or anyone else about Matthew. Why not, Lucia? What are you hiding? Were you planning on meeting someone in Westport? I had to rush my question since she was obviously preparing to bolt. She stood up, wrapped her books, and tossed some euros on the table. I have to go or I'll miss the bus back to Rooney Key and my parents will worry. Her eyes pleaded with me, I noticed. I nodded. I wasn't going to learn any more from her now. I hoped to God she was telling the truth about not knowing anything further about Matthew and Sharon for her sake.